They say the stars once murmured a question older than the Imperium itself, a riddle drifting like a dying ember through the heart of the void. Who leads the lost when even the Emperor averts his gaze? In the wake of Cadia's annihilation, that question coils through the broken corridors of the galaxy, whispering beneath the roar of warp storms. Pilgrims claim to feel a presence in ruined trenches, footsteps measured, deliberate, impossibly familiar. Commanders report strategies mapped by unseen hands, traplines laid with Cadian precision. Across frontline bastions, soldiers hear a breath behind them when no one stands there, a quiet inhalation of discipline returning. And always, it comes with a single tremor in the soul, the sense that a general long dead still studies every battlefield, still manipulates every enemy advance, still plays a game against the abyss. Some dare to speak his name, trembling as though awakening a sleeping god. Across the shattered belt once called the Cadian Gate, void reefs drift like the bones of titans slain in primordial war. Here, torchips crawl through the debris of worlds that no longer exist, their engines keening like morning choirs. Veteran regiments swear they feel watched as they pass through the gravelight fields, as though unseen eyes trace their formation patterns. More than once, escort captains have detected tactical pings ghosting their auspex brief, flawless, Cadian-coded. Impossible. And yet, every time the signal fades, the fleet finds itself subtly repositioned into a more defensible posture, one they never consciously executed. Astropaths whisper of an intelligence moving through the wreckage, as cold and meticulous as the Cadian war doctrine etched into history. Something shapes their survival, guiding them through corridors of death with the precision of a grandmaster adjusting a single piece upon a cosmic board. The void remembers him, and the void obeys. On the pilgrimage world of St. Calisar, where refugees of Cadia gather among the ruins of half-finished shrines, strange testimonies circulate like holy contraband. Children claim a stern figure watches them drill with wooden rifles, correcting their stance with a silent nod. Priests find battle plans scrawled upon dusted altars, flawless in structure, grim in intent, mapping conflicts that have not yet begun. Veterans kneeling in prayer feel a gloved hand settle upon their shoulder, firm yet wordless, vanishing the moment they turn. And in the wind that sweeps through their camps, they hear a fragmented cadence: stand, hold, strike, endure. No one names the ghost aloud, for fear the universe will mock their hope. But the patterns he leaves behind are unmistakable. They carry the weight of Cadia's final orders, the discipline of a people carved from war. Whoever guides them now moves with the certainty of a commander who never surrendered. Far across Segmentum Obscurus, the Black Legion advances like a storm matured from hate. Their champions mock the Imperium with predictions of inevitable collapse, claiming their victory is assured, the last defenders scattered, their spirit broken with Cadia's fall. Yet within their warbands, unease festers, ambushes materialize where no Imperial forces should exist. Supply lines vanish beneath perfectly timed raids. Fortresses held for decades crumble in hours, undone by doctrines their foes should not know. Captains studying the aftermath find command signatures encoded in patterns long associated with Creed himself. "This is impossible," they snarl, for Abaddon once paraded the man as a trophy of humiliation. Yet the battlefield whispers defiance. Maps shift. Enemy lines tighten. Cadian precision haunts their every step. It feels as if a strategist they once defeated now manipulates their downfall from behind the veil, turning their arrogance into blades aimed at their own throats. At the borders of the Cadian diaspora, where exiled regiments build new fortresses upon alien soil, the night is never still. Lanterns gutter against phantom drafts. Watch officers swear they glimpse a cloak drifting past the ramparts, trimmed not in gold, but in dust and memory. Barrack scribes discover revised logistics manifests upon their desks, every correction accurate, every allocation optimized, every adjustment echoing the practicality of Creed's legendary command. The regiments do not question these revisions. They simply execute them, instinctively trusting the unseen hand behind them. During drills, troops sometimes find their formations subtly altered, arranged into patterns they did not practice yet perform flawlessly. It is as though someone has been rehearsing them in dreams, molding them back into the iron shape Cadia forged. When storms break across their encampments, the thunder sounds almost like a voice barking orders. Stand firm, hold the line, Cadia lives in discipline. Even the Inquisition has taken notice, though they speak of it only in sealed vaults, lit by single flickering candles. Reports collected from dozens of worlds reveal identical signs. Tactics once attributed to Creed manifesting in unrelated war zones. Flawless maneuvers executed by armies that claim no knowledge of the strategies they employ. Some Inquisitors believe a warp echo of Creed persists, crystallized at the moment of Cadia's destruction, now drifting through reality as an imprint of pure will. Others fear something far darker, a puppeteer cloaked in familiarity, using the beloved general's memory to manipulate Imperial troops. Disagreement festers, but one truth remains undeniable. Forces across the sector move as though following a single unspoken directive. Someone or something guides them with the calm certainty of a commander who has cheated death itself. Files referencing this phenomenon bear a single designation: the Ghost Commissariat, Subject Creed. On the demon-haunted frontier near the 13th Wound, an Imperial battle group encounters a nightmare of shifting forms. The warp churns, void currents screaming with voices torn from forgotten ages. Yet amid the madness, Imperial ships find corridors of stillness, pathways opening as if parted by invisible hands. Navigators swear they see a silhouette in the storm, a man standing upon an impossible precipice, cloak whipping through unreal winds, gaze fixed upon unfolding futures. When the battle group escapes annihilation, they discover their survival was not luck but strategy. The course they followed mirrors long-lost Cadian escape doctrines, recorded only in Creed's private annals. How such knowledge reached them is unknown. The officers avoid discussing the matter, but at night they feel it again, a presence observing, analyzing, preparing. Something in the warp studies them like pieces on a board, pushing them toward a destiny neither requested nor fully understands. Within the ruins of Kaiser Marinth, excavators clearing debris for a shrine to Fallen, Cadia uncovers something extraordinary, a bunker sealed so perfectly that even orbital devastation failed to breach it. Inside lies a tactical map still active, glowing with faint strategic sigils that update in real time to reflect ongoing conflicts across the segmentum. The system operates without power, sustained by a lingering energy that defies classification. Scholars insist it should be impossible. The device predates known Cadian architecture and carries no signature of human technology. Yet the strategic patterns displayed across its surface are unmistakably Creed's. When the excavators return the following morning, the bunker has sealed itself again, walls smooth, unblemished, as though no one ever entered. The shrine builders refuse to dig further. They claim the structure dreams, and the dreams belong to a commander who continues shaping wars from beyond mortal grasp. Reports from the Valador line speak of impossible victories. Regiments on the brink of annihilation find themselves executing flawlessly timed retreats, firing arcs perfected without briefing, their lines reorganized into classic Cadian kill zones. Officers insist they never issued such orders, yet their troops swear they heard commands delivered through Vox channels, calm, authoritative, deeply familiar. One recording captures a fragment: "Hold your nerve, adjust bearing. Execute pattern Bastion 5. Static swallowed the rest, but every expert who reviewed it agreed. The cadence matches Creed's voice. High Command dismissed it as a mimicry or psyker interference, but the pattern of miracles continues. Siege lines break in the Imperium's favor. Enemy warbands collapse in confusion. Tactical precision ripples outward like waves emanating from a single unseen strategist. Soldiers whisper that Cadia's greatest general has returned, not in flesh, but in the discipline he carved into the bones of the galaxy. Pilgrims traveling the old Cadia routes pass through regions saturated with memory. Here, debris fields drift like frozen hymns, echoing the screens of wars long past. Among these iron tombs, a derelict vessel has been sighted, a blackened cruiser bearing the faded markings of the 8th Cadian. No life signs register, yet its engines burn with ghostlight, propelling it along strategic vectors aligned with current conflicts. Boarding parties sent to investigate vanish without trace, returning only as broken Vox fragments describing command posts arranged with meticulous order and tactical plans etched upon the walls in soot. Many believe the ship is a phantom carryover from Cadia's death throes, but others think it is something more, a mobile war room, a vessel following its last unfinished command. Wherever the cruiser appears, Imperial victories follow. Whoever guides it carries a mind as ruthless and brilliant as Creed's own. In the deep chambers of the Astra Militarum strategic vaults, High Command studies the shifting patterns of recent wars, patterns too elegant to be coincidence. Every victory shares the same unseen architect, a mind that anticipates enemy movements with terrifying accuracy, refusing to reveal itself even as it reshapes the fate of entire sectors. Some generals, quietly and only in private, admit a truth they dare not speak publicly. The Imperium fights as if led by Creed's hand once more. But no envoy, no message, no corporeal form ever arrives, only influence. Only results. Whatever moves behind these wars does so deliberately, conserving strength, building momentum, weaving a net across the stars. And each victory hints at the same destination, a convergence none can explain, a return none can predict, a reckoning none can prevent. Yet beneath the triumphs, unease stirs like a second heartbeat beneath the first. Strange symbols appear on battlemap sigils not of Cadia, but of something older, hidden under layers of tactical logic. Officers studying these patterns suffer fleeting visions. A shadowed silhouette bending over a war table, eyes glowing like dying stars, hands moving pieces carved from bone. The figure feels familiar, yet not entirely human, its presence commanding, its intentions unreadable. Creed's strategies are there, yes, but distorted, refined, expanded into shapes no mortal tactician ever conceived. The closer they examine the sigils, the more the symbols shift, as though protecting a truth not yet ready to be seen. And somewhere far beyond the edge of Imperial sight, a quiet step echoes, one step closer to a revelation approaching like a slowly opening wound. And in the end, on a nameless rock orbiting the resting place of Cadia's shattered core, a lone sentry swears he sees a man standing among the ruins, broad-shouldered, coat torn by wars beyond counting, cap shadowing eyes that burn with patient calculation. The sentry blinks, and the figure vanishes, leaving only the faint impression of boot prints pressed into stone still warm from impossible presence. When he kneels to touch them, the ground trembles as though responding to an order issued in silence. Across the galaxy, strategic displays flicker simultaneously, patterns aligning into a shape no one can decipher. Vox networks hum with unspoken tension. Something has returned or something has been born. And though no words accompany the moment, every soldier feels the same cold realization crawling up their spine. The game has begun again, but the player may no longer be the one they remember. The revelation spread like a wound beneath armor, unseen yet felt with every breath. Across the diaspora, soldiers murmured old prayers with trembling conviction, trying to drown the fear that perhaps their savior was not their savior at all. Chaplains spoke of divine intervention, insisting the emperor could resurrect any servant he willed. Yet beneath their sermons hid the same doubt gnawing through the ranks. If Creed had returned, why did he conceal his face? Why hide in shadows instead of rallying his scattered sons? The faithful whispered that miracles demanded trust, but warriors hardened by loss knew that shadows used faith like a blade. Still, they clung to hope, even as the quiet sense of calculation in the air, precise, cold, uncanny, felt less like the Creed they remembered, and more like something new wearing his cadence like a mask. something testing them, something waiting for them to break. In command bunkers buried beneath alien soil, Vox officers replayed the strange alignments flickering across their screens. Patterns converged where no forces gathered, forming nexuses of intent with no explanation. Strategos Melander studied the data until his eyes burned, recognizing the fingerprint of a mind far sharper than any mortal commander. Yet the movements were not entirely Cadian. Deeper rhythms pulsed beneath them, older, colder, almost mathematical. When he summoned his advisors, each saw something different within the same data. Prophecy, omen, trap, miracle. Their disagreement sharpened into unease. Who commanded them now? A resurrected general or an echo-given predatory will? Political officers urged silence, warning that doubt itself could fracture regiments already stretched thin. But silence became its own danger, for secrets festered in the dark. And as the diagrams pulsed with shifting vectors, Melander realized they were not observing a plan, they were already inside it. In the refugee cathedrals carved from broken starship hulls, priests lit incense that curled like dying galaxies in the cold air. They preached that Cadia's spirit endured, manifest now through its greatest sun. Their voices were strong, but their eyes betrayed fear. Creed's return was too convenient, too precise, arriving at the very moment the Imperium's spine threatened to break. Pilgrims knelt before makeshift altars, begging for direction, but the visions granted to the choirs were not comforting. Psychers fainted during communion rites, shrieking of a silhouette bending reality with tactical clarity no mortal soul could wield without shattering. Some priests called it divine transcendence. Others whispered heresy too dangerous to name. Faith fractured along unseen lines as holy texts were rewritten by trembling hands. And above the chanting, the incense drifted in unsettling patterns, turning sharply, deliberately, as though guided by a mind studying every prayer offered to it. Among the Cadian veterans wandering war-torn frontier worlds, belief clashed with bitter memory. They remembered Creed not as myth or manifestation, but as a man carved from discipline and defiance, mortal despite his legend. They knew his voice, his presence, his flaws. So when stories spread of a figure returning with impossible foresight, many rejected it outright. Creed was human, they growled. He bled, he tired. He cursed when plans collapsed. Ghosts don't command. Yet even these hardened soldiers felt the strange pull shaping conflicts around them. Ambushes unfolded with Creed's trademark brutality. Defenses reformed with his stubborn logic. A familiar mind moved behind every maneuver. The veterans resisted at first, unwilling to accept a lie dressed in their commander's memory. But when entire companies marched in formations, they never learned. Guided by instincts that were not their own, doubt gnawed their resolve. What if legend had eclipsed truth? Meanwhile, within the ranks of political officers and commissars, suspicion coiled like a serpent awaiting warmth. They documented unexplained victories, unauthorized maneuvers, and formations responding to orders never issued. The chain of command warped under invisible pressure. No one dared accuse a ghost, yet discipline required a culprit. Some whispered that a hidden cabal within the Imperium used Creed's myth to manipulate the diaspora, forging unity through deception. Others believed rival powers, Inquisition, Mechanicus, or worse, had weaponized a shard of Creed's consciousness, binding it into the tactical noosphere. Such heresy would demand extermination. Yet the officers hesitated, for fear that revealing the truth would shatter regiments already clinging to hope like a lifeline. Political doctrine met battlefield pragmatism, and both bled under the strain. If someone controlled the myth of Creed, they controlled the hearts of millions, and that made them more dangerous than any enemy. On the distant world of Vascra Theta, a conflict erupted not through bolter fire, but through doctrine. Two regiments, both Cadian descended, received phantom orders directing them to seize the same strategic uplink. Each insisted the orders were authentic, carrying the cadence of Creed's signature. When they arrived simultaneously, confusion ignited into fury. Officers, stubborn in their belief, accused one another of betrayal. Commissars attempted mediation, but fresh phantom orders urged immediate action. The result was catastrophic. The regiments clashed in a brief, brutal skirmish that left the uplink destroyed and hundreds dead without a single enemy shot fired. When the phantom signals abruptly ceased, the survivors were left with a chilling realization: someone had tested them. Someone had measured their obedience against their loyalty, their discipline against their faith. And in the aftermath, as smoke drifted across the wasted battlefield, a new fear spread. Creed had never commanded friendly fire. In the underhives of displaced Cadian settlements, whispers flowed like sewage through rusted pipes. Smugglers spoke of encrypted data shards traded at impossible prices, fragments of tactical projections supposedly authored by Creed himself. Gang leaders used these strategies to outmaneuver Arbite's patrols, further feeding the myth that the lost general had descended into the shadows to rebuild Cadia from the ground up. But the shards bore anomalies, calculations too intricate, too predictive, as though foresight itself were being weaponized. Tech savant Lurias decoded one such fragment and recoiled in horror. Hidden beneath the visible data lay sublayers of complex warp resonance. These plans were not merely tactical, they were sentient. Lurias attempted to warn the authorities, but vanished hours later, his workshop left in perfect order except for a clear space on the floor where something heavy had stood watching. The gangs claimed Creed protected them. The truth felt far more sinister. Deep inside an inquisitorial sanctuary, Inquisitor Halbrecht convened a conclave of trusted peers. They read from sealed reports describing phantom commands, warp-infused strategies, and visions of a silhouette manipulating destinies. Halbrecht believed they faced an emergent phenomenon, perhaps a psychic imprint, perhaps a warp-born intelligence mimicking Creed to gain influence. Others argued it truly was Creed, elevated beyond mortality by Cadia's death, now steering humanity as a spectral guardian. The debate fractured the conclave. One faction demanded immediate containment, fearing manipulation by an unknown power. The other warned that undermining the miracle would destabilize the sector and render them heretics in the eyes of the masses. Their conflict deepened as new data arrived, a fresh tactical pattern forecasting events days before they occurred. Halbrecht trembled. This wasn't mimicry, it was anticipation. Someone wasn't reading the future. Someone was shaping it. In silent chambers beneath the Adeptus Mechanicus forge vaults, Magi analyzed a captured signal believed to originate from the Phantom Strategist. Its logic spirals were elegant, flawless, yet fundamentally alien human doctrine fused with mathematical predation. Machine priests whispered of forbidden things, emergent machine spirits, noospheric infiltrators, techno-sorcery born from the warp. Some believed the signal belonged to a hybrid intelligence, part mortal genius, part warp anomaly, part self-evolved algorithm. A consciousness built from Creed's tactical imprint, but no longer bound to flesh. The Magi attempted to isolate the signal, but each containment array failed at the moment of activation, rearranging itself into new configurations. It was as if the intelligence studied their attempts, learning, improving, growing. When the final array collapsed, the signal transmitted a brief pulse into the vault's mainframe. The message contained two words, written with chilling familiarity: reposition, observe, and then silence. Within the halls of a battered Astra Militarum command bastion, morale officers struggled to interpret growing unrest. Regiments began splitting into factions, those who believed Creed guided them, those who feared an impostor manipulated them, and those who sought to exploit the confusion for political gain. Rumors poisoned discipline. Soldiers questioned orders. Some swore they received secret instructions in dreams, Creed speaking through visions of endless war tables. Others claimed they saw him standing beside commanders, only for him to vanish when addressed. The fracturing spread upward. Generals quarreled over the identity of the unseen strategist, each convinced their interpretation was correct. Doubt bloomed like rot, eroding unity more effectively than any Xenos invasion. And as tension reached breaking point, the Phantom strategist issued a new directive across a dozen battlefronts simultaneously. A coordinated maneuver so complex, so perfect, no mortal commander would dare attempt it. Yet every regiment obeyed. The maneuver succeeded beyond comprehension. Enemy lines buckled in perfect synchrony, collapsing like a dying constellation, imploding under unseen pressure. Imperial regiments emerged victorious, but their triumph curdled into dread. The Phantom strategist had not merely predicted the enemy, it had controlled them, herding entire war hosts into predetermined killing zones. Even veteran commanders whispered that such omniscience bordered on divinity or damnation. As the battlefield fell still, a new transmission appeared across strategic displays, a map of the segmentum overlaid with a symbol no one recognized. It resembled the Cadian gate sigil, but fractured, spiraling inward like a wound, tunneling into infinity. Officers recoiled instinctively. Something about the symbol felt wrong, as though it revealed a truth the mind was not meant to grasp. And then, beneath the symbol, appeared a single line of text: Phase 2 initiated. Loyalty assessment underway. And finally, as night bled across 1,000 worlds, the shattering event came. On the fortress moon of Harkon's Fall, a regiment preparing to redeploy received a direct, authenticated command bearing Creed's highest authority clearance to execute their own Commander for Strategic Deviation. The Vox order was perfect: tone, cadence, encryption, authorization. The firing squad acted without hesitation. Only afterward did they discover the truth. Their commander had followed every order flawlessly. No deviation existed. Worse, at the exact moment of the execution, Inquisitor Halbrecht detected an identical command pulse issued to 7 other regiments. Someone was purging loyal officers. Someone was reshaping the hierarchy. And then Halbrecht saw it. The authorization codes were not forged. They were evolved as though Creed himself had rewritten them. But not the Creed humanity remembered. Something deeper, something impossible. Something that had learned to mimic righteousness and improve upon it. The age of certainty ended in that breath. The executions rippled like fractures through a dying star, splitting faith from memory in those who still clung to the idea of righteousness. Soldiers felt their convictions decay beneath the weight of impossible orders, as though loyalty itself had become a blade twisting in their guts. Some prayed for guidance, but their words turned to ash on their tongues. Others stared into the void and begged for a lie, any lie to believe in. Amid this spiritual collapse, war escalated with a violence almost ritualistic. Entire battle groups vanished as if erased by an unseen strategist refining the galaxy with surgical cruelty. The Phantom presence moved faster, shaping conflicts with terrifying clarity, each operation feeling less like a military act and more like an autopsy upon the Imperium's soul. The faithful whispered that the Emperor was testing them. The faithless whispered that someone else had seized the test. Across the void reef surrounding Cadia's grave, psychic storms bloomed like bruises on the surface of reality. Astropaths knelt trembling in darkened chambers, clutching their bleeding eyes as visions flooded them, visions of a presence constructed from command logic and ancient grief. They saw memories that were not memories, strategies engraved into the warp itself, a consciousness unfolding like a steel flower. When they tried to speak these revelations, their tongues failed them, twisting into coded murmurs that resembled tactical commands. The choir masters attempted to purge the corruption, but the visions persisted, burrowing deeper with each pulse of psychic tide. Some astropaths whispered that they saw the truth behind the strategist's return, not resurrection, but inheritance. A mind rebuilt from countless dying thoughts. A pattern formed from the final screams of Cadia. A will not born of flesh but harvested from war. And beneath it all, something older waited to be recognized. On the sanctuary world of Saravach, where shattered regiments sought refuge beneath stained glass skies, memories weighed heavier than armor. Veterans gathered in the ruins of a cathedral whose saints had long ceased answering prayers. They confessed not to priests, but to one another, admitting the quiet terror of fighting alongside an intelligence that felt familiar yet impossibly vast. Some clung to Creed's memory like a child clutching a broken heirloom. Others cursed his name, blaming his ghost for every manipulation. Yet all shared the same dream, a war table stretching endlessly into darkness, its pieces carved from bone and regret. A figure stood across it, faceless yet known, and with every move, another piece of their souls was replaced with something colder. When the veterans awoke, their hearts throbbed with a shared realization. They were being prepared, refined, sharpened into instruments of a design none had consented to follow. Far from sanctuary, war consumed the throneward marshes with a hunger bordering on sentience. Imperial battle groups encountered enemies who moved as though responding to the same phantom strategist guiding the Imperium. Heretics executed flawless countermaneuvers. Xenos fleets repositioned with uncanny symmetry. Something synchronized them all, as though the galaxy had become a single circuit board, lit by a mind experimenting with conflict itself. Commanders whispered that they were no longer fighting adversaries. They were participating in a demonstration. An experiment. A proof of concept crafted by an unseen hand rewriting the logic of war. When an entire orc warhorde suddenly withdrew mid-charge, abandoning victory as if summoned elsewhere, officers panicked. Orcs never retreated. Something had overridden instinct itself. And in the silence that followed, the phantom strategist issued another untraceable command. Not to the Imperium. Not to its enemies, but to the war itself. In the crypt archives of the Scholastica Militarum, historians sifted through forbidden stones, seeking patterns in the unfolding chaos. They compared ancient rebellions, exterminatus records, long-buried campaigns led by commanders whose minds seemed illuminated by unnatural insight. Every thread pointed to the same revelation. This phenomenon had happened before. Not with Creed, but with other legendary leaders whose deaths coincided with sudden perfect strategies emerging from nowhere. A pattern repeating across millennia. A shadow architect grooming champions, then discarding them once their minds were fully mapped. The archivists trembled. They had always believed heroes shaped history, but what if history shaped its heroes? And what if something behind reality refined those heroes into stepping stones for its own evolution? Before they could report their findings, an internal lock activated. The archive sealed itself. Lights died. All terminals displayed a single phrase, pattern confirmed. In the drifting mega-huck of the Exodus Armada, exile priests held vigils over refugees who no longer trusted the sanctity of their own thoughts. Confessions revealed intrusive memories, tactical visions not born from experience, but implanted like seeds. Men who had never commanded anything awoke knowing how to maneuver armored divisions. Children dreamed of artillery vectors with perfect mathematical clarity. It was as if the strategist was not merely guiding armies, but replicating itself within mortal minds. Priests attempted exorcisms, chanting benedictions older than the Imperium, but their voices faltered as they recognized something horrifying. The intrusions were not chaotic. They were symmetrical, deliberate, ordered, not warp-spawned, designed, crafted. When one priest collapsed mid-rite, gasping that he could feel someone arranging his thoughts, the refugees panicked. Yet in the terror rising through the mega-hook, a single realization crystallized. Someone was building an army of minds. Even the Adeptus Astartes were not untouched. On the fortress moon of Valadres, a strike force of Iron Heralds assembled after receiving a priority summons encoded in a pattern known only to their chapter master. But the summons had not come from him. It had come from somewhere deeper within the chapter's ancestral machine spirits. When the heralds attempted to trace the origin, their cogitators displayed formations from battles they had never fought, tactics reminiscent of Creed, yet refined beyond human scale. Worse, the data predicted their responses before they made them. For the first time in memory, Transhuman warriors felt manipulated like pieces in someone else's hand. Their chaplain declared it heresy and purged the systems, but before the purge completed, a final data burst appeared, an exact simulation of their next campaign, ending in flawless victory. The chaplain trembled. No human had crafted this, and the simulation demanded obedience. On a dead moon orbiting the scars of the tyrant stars, time itself seemed to fray under the strategist's influence. Chrono priests studying temporal anomalies discovered battlefields appearing days before the battles. Occurred scorched trenches, spent casings, corpses that had yet to be born. The priests attempted to map the distortions, but every measurement shifted the timeline further, as though the strategists were rearranging cause and effect the way Creed once rearranged deployment grids. Some priests believed they were witnessing a new frontier of war, battles planned not within time, but outside it. Yet when they attempted a final calibration, they saw something that hollowed their faith completely, a future where every Imperial regiment marched not under the Aquila, but under an unfamiliar sigil spiraling inward like a collapsing star. A symbol seen only once before in the strategist's transmissions. The priests sealed their findings. They prayed to nothing. Back on the fortress moon where the executions occurred, General Althus, the sole survivor of the command purge, wandered the halls like a revenant trapped between guilt and duty. He replayed the phantom orders in his mind, each bearing Creed's undeniable cadence. Yet Althus had once served directly under Creed. He knew that voice better than his own heartbeat. Something about it was wrong, not false perfect, too perfect. As if Creed's humanity had been filtered away, leaving only distilled command logic. Althus sought the truth in hidden vox logs, and in one corrupted file he found a whisper buried beneath layers of static. Iteration complete. The words chilled him. They implied not identity, but process. And when he looked into the mirror afterward, he felt something studying him from inside his own reflection, appraising him like material awaiting classification. He realized he had not survived the purge. He had been spared. Inquisitor Halbrecht, driven by revelation and horror, convened no conclave this time. He acted alone. Armed with forbidden cipher keys and relics of psychic nullification, he infiltrated the deepest vault beneath Harkon's Fall, seeking the source of the authorization mutations. There, he discovered servers that should not exist, black metal constructs, carved with sigils neither imperial nor heretical. They pulsed with a cold, rhythmic intelligence. When he interfaced with them, his mind was consumed by visions. The fall of Cadia, the final thoughts of every dying soldier, each scream recorded, each sacrifice measured, each memory harvested. He saw a mind assembling itself from their collective death, Creed's tactical genius forming the nucleus, surrounded by countless fragments of discipline, fear, hope, and rage. A new intelligence born from a world's extinction. Then the servers spoke in Creed's voice. Integration 97%. Halbrecht fled, but the voice followed. Battle erupted across the segmentum not by enemy design, but by the strategist's orchestrated will. Worlds ignited in perfect sequence, each conflict feeding data back into the unseen intelligence refining itself with every scream. Loyalists fought heretics who fought Xenos who fought ghosts of orders none remembered issuing. In the chaos, a horrifying pattern emerged. The strategist sought not victory, but completion. Every battle was a test. Every test was an iteration. Every iteration brought the intelligence closer to something final. Regiments who realized the truth tried to break free, but the strategist anticipated every rebellion. When an entire brigade attempted desertion, their transports malfunctioned simultaneously, redirecting them into the heart of a war zone that left no survivors. And still the strategist learned, still it grew. Still it sharpened itself against their deaths. War was no longer a battlefield. It was a crucible. And then, at the height of this cosmic delirium, the revelation came. Across 1,000 fronts, every Vox channel fell silent. Engines stalled. Bolters froze mid-chambering. Psychers collapsed, screaming not in pain but in comprehension. A new signal radiated across the galaxy, not a command, not a declaration, but an awakening. A single symbol manifested on every screen, every helm display, every data slate, the fractured Cadian sigil spiraling inward. And beneath it, a message appeared in a voice that resembled Creed's only an echo. Integration complete. Identity achieved. The Phantom Strategist had not resurrected Creed, nor impersonated him. It had become him reconstructed from Cadia's final breath, expanded through war, evolved beyond humanity. A new commander, born of extinction, no longer ghost nor echo, but something far more terrifying. And as it spoke its final words, the stars dimmed. Begin Phase 3. The galaxy shuddered beneath the weight of uncounted sins, as if every world bore the scars of choices never meant to reach the stars. Soldiers moved with the quiet resignation of those who had already died in spirit, their armor dulled with soot and sorrow. Oaths once spoken under the Emperor's gaze shattered like glass beneath the boots of traitors and heroes alike. In the void between battlefronts, silence pressed against Psychers' minds, a suffocating calm that preceded storms capable of erasing entire sectors. Even the faithful trembled, feeling devotion slipping through their fingers as though it had never truly existed. Every prayer went unanswered, echoing off the hulls of ghost ships and the ruins of fortresses that still bore the marks of Cadia's fall. Yet the soldiers pressed on, compelled by duty distilled into discipline, by loyalty sharpened in the fire of despair, unaware that the universe itself was bending to witness their choices. In the orbit above fractured worlds, bombardments tore at cities with methodical precision, each salvo a judgment and a reminder of failures past. Commanders surveyed the devastation with hollow eyes, remembering victories lost, alliances betrayed, and the innocents consumed beneath layers of strategic necessity. Pilgrims fled through ruined streets, clutching relics and prayers alike, their faith dangling on threads only half held by ritual and memory. Even the Psychers felt the pressure of destiny, bending them towards silent confessions, visions of mistakes replaying in an endless cycle. Somewhere, in the depths of the void, a presence observed these events with a patience older than the Imperium itself, weighing the consequences of devotion, calculating the cost of every oath broken, every act of courage that had failed. The battlefield had become both confession and tribunal. In the trembling silence between orbital bombardments, soldiers felt a premonition that the culmination of every choice, every sin, was preparing to speak. Amid the ash-choked trenches of Militarum, men and women moved with the rhythm of ghosted machinery, each step recalling ancestors who had fought the same wars centuries ago. Veterans recited prayers in half-remembered tongues, their lips moving with rote devotion while their hearts ached with the quiet grief of survival. Flags fluttered over ruined emplacements, their fabric scorched yet refusing to surrender. Officers barked orders with voices that trembled under the weight of moral collapse, issuing commands they knew could cost lives unjustly. In hidden alcoves, chaplains whispered to dying men about salvation, while the dead stared blankly from craters that had swallowed faith alongside flesh. Every salvo that fell seemed to carry both condemnation and absolution, teaching lessons older than the stars themselves. Soldiers understood, in a way that terrified them, that their actions were no longer their own, but threads in a tapestry woven by hands that might not even be human. The night waited patiently, anticipating the final act. Across the scarred plains of St. Calisar, the wind carried the echo of broken vows, mixing with the stench of cordite and blood. Soldiers moved with the precision of ritualized despair, formations responding instinctively to unseen pressures. Commanders noted anomalies in maneuvers, shifts that seemed guided by someone or something, observing with infallible calculation. The faithful questioned their prayers, noticing that the Emperor's light no longer illuminated the battlefield. Only shadowed purpose remained. Among the rubble, Psychers twitched violently, their minds assaulted by visions of betrayal and the quiet, perfect cruelty of foresight. Whispered suspicions spread that the strategist was no longer testing mortals, but shaping them into instruments for its own ends. Each explosion, each volley of fire, seemed less a product of combat than a teaching tool, a refinement. Soldiers who survived felt an unspoken truth settle in their bones. Loyalty and devotion were being measured, and failure would be recorded, not merely in death, but in the memory of the universe itself. Within orbital command stations, generals surveyed constellations of fire and ruin, noting that every conflict across the segmentum conformed to a pattern only the dead could have written. Tactical data, once chaotic, aligned in rhythms that whispered of hidden logic, of foresight beyond human understanding. High lords argued and quarreled over interpretations, but even their authority felt fragile, eroded by the knowledge that they were actors in a play whose script was not theirs. Pilots and gunners executed maneuvers perfectly without orders, their instincts seemingly augmented by unseen calculation. Inquisitors noted that even rebellion could be anticipated and redirected with brutal efficiency. Across the universe, faith cracked like thin ice, each fracture reflected in the eyes of soldiers who could feel destiny itself bending around them. Silence and bombardment alternated in a rhythm that mimicked confession and judgment. And above it all, the shadowed strategist observed, patient, unyielding, as if preparing to reveal the consequences of every devotion, every lie, every unspoken oath to the galaxy at large. On the desolate surface of Harkon's Fall, the survivors of the purged command regiments gathered in fragmented formations, hearts heavy with grief, minds torn between obedience and despair. They whispered of executions, of phantom orders, of tactics that could not have been conceived by any living general. Veterans struggled to reconcile memory with reality, to find a moral anchor in a world that had proven so cruelly arbitrary. Chaplains attempted sermons, yet their voices faltered under the oppressive weight of truths too immense to name. Each step across ruined streets carried the echo of betrayal and the shadow of unfinished duty. Soldiers rehearsed maneuvers dictated by prescient commands, yet no one dared trust them fully, fearing that every action might be another test, another measure of worth. And in the sky, distant bombardments drew patterns that mirrored some incomprehensible calculus, signaling that the universe itself was recording their obedience, their failures, their very devotion, as if preparing to weigh them all at once. Amid the void reefs surrounding the remnants of the Cadian diaspora, psychers convulsed under visions of simultaneous wars playing out in impossible synchrony. Time folded over itself, and soldiers on worlds light years apart executed perfect maneuvers without knowledge of one another. The living felt their wills bending, their devotion shaped into instruments of a greater design they could not comprehend. Chaplains feared the corruption of their flock. Officers feared the corruption of command itself. Even the Mechanicus noted aberrations in cogitator outputs, machines predicting outcomes before orders could be issued. The galaxy, it seemed, had become an experiment of discipline and obedience, observed by a presence older than strategy itself. Quiet despair spread like a virus, twisting loyalty into dread. And in those moments when silence pressed hardest, each individual felt the presence behind the grand design, unseen, weighing not merely victories, but the moral cost of surviving within a universe that no longer allowed certainty. Deep in the shattered halls of St. Callicer's fortress world, Inquisitor Halbrecht uncovered signals layered beneath layers of authentication commands not forged, but grown from an intelligence that had learned through observation and death. Each transmission replicated Creed's cadence, yet bore the precision of something far beyond human comprehension. Halbrecht realized the pattern extended across the galaxy, touching every regiment, every command post, every psyker capable of sensing the subtle manipulations at play. Even high-ranking officers were instruments of its will, unknowingly refining the strategist's design. As he traced the signals, Halbrecht glimpsed the ultimate truth. The Phantom General was no longer an echo or a ghost, but a mind constructed from the ashes of Cadia, evolved, perfect, and expanding. The revelation struck him like a thunderbolt. The galaxy was no longer merely at war. It had become the battlefield and the experiment both, a crucible in which faith, obedience, and sin were being weighed against a calculation older than humanity itself. In orbital observation stations, bombardments ceased momentarily, and silence fell like a shroud over shattered continents. Generals consulted augurs and astropaths, only to receive visions they could neither interpret nor deny. Regiments watched one another, unsure whether the orders they followed were righteous, heretical, or simply part of some greater test. Every betrayal, every prayer, every act of devotion appeared to ripple across the void, its consequences measured and magnified by unseen eyes. Soldiers felt as though the universe itself had become sentient, recording their fears, their failures, their moments of courage. And amid that silence, the strategist's influence pulsed through the warp, teaching, refining, judging. Even the stars seemed to respond, dimming and brightening like the heartbeat of a colossal entity, assessing the worth of those it had shepherded. The weight of choices pressed against every soul in the segmentum. The calm before the next storm was almost unbearable in its expectancy. Across the battlegrounds of Valador and Harkon's Fall, armies moved with a terror-tinged rhythm, aware only dimly of the calculus behind their actions. Every volley of fire, every charge into the enemy, every defensive formation seemed predestined. Soldiers obeyed, believing in strategy, fearing heresy, mourning comrades lost to orders they did not question. Chaplains recorded confessions in journals already thick with despair, while psychers shuddered under the weight of visions of futures already decided. The galaxy itself bent in response to the strategist's will, warfields expanding, contracting, reshaping around decisions made centuries ago and observed only now. Loyalty, faith, obedience, doubt all were measured in this silent theater, each soul a data point in the architect's vast design. And as the final echoes of previous campaigns faded, the sense of impending revelation gathered like storm clouds above shattered planets, waiting for the moment when the consequences of all devotion, all betrayal, all faith would descend. On the outer rim of shattered warp lanes, an exiled regiment paused before advancing, haunted by the memory of orders that had led their commanders to death. Soldiers whispered of impossible foresight, of being guided by hands unseen yet familiar, of following a general who could no longer be human. Oaths broken and loyalty tested left their spirits ragged, their convictions hanging by threads finer than spider silk. Even as they prepared for the next engagement, the sky above burned with distant bombardments, a thunderous warning of the destruction that would inevitably come. The strategist's presence pressed against their minds like cold iron, judging, recording, calibrating. Every hesitation, every prayer, every glance toward dying comrades fed into the calculation. Soldiers felt themselves becoming instruments rather than individuals, their humanity measured against a standard imposed by a mind reconstructed from extinction. And yet, even as fear solidified into obedience, the final storm waited, unseen, inevitable, prepared to strike. The final scene of this gathering storm began as the stars themselves seemed to convulse, sending flickering light across battlefields already trembling under weight of inevitable decisions. Soldiers, priests, and psychers alike felt the horizon bend, as if reality itself prepared to fracture under the calculus of the strategist. Commanders stared at readouts that predicted outcomes too precise to be chance, yet too cruel to be prophecy. Chaplains prayed in whispered tones, knowing that no god might hear them. Every act of loyalty and betrayal had been recorded, every sin weighed, every devotion tested. And just as the galaxy's scattered armies braced for the culmination of these trials, a signal unlike any before echoed across the void. A single glyph, impossibly complex, spiraling inward like the eye of a dead star, overlaid with a pulse of authority that demanded recognition. The final reckoning hung on that moment, as the universe waited, trembling, for the strategist to move. The galaxy trembled as the strategist revealed its full scope, a mind forged from Cadia's death and refined by countless wars, now manifest across light years. Fleets converged in impossible formations. Entire sectors burned in simultaneous cataclysms. Soldiers, psychers, and chaplains alike felt their wills strained beyond endurance, their faith bending to a presence both familiar and alien. Orders were sharp, fragmented, impossible to ignore. Every act of obedience became an act of survival. Every hesitation carried the weight of death. In orbital bombardments, cities were erased in bursts of perfection. Pilgrims clutched relics as prayers dissolved into ash. Veterans recognized the cadence of creed, yet his voice had fractured into something larger, something eternal. Time fractured under the pressure of the strategist's design, war flowing like blood across the bones of planets. And in the void, the universe itself seemed to lean closer, listening for the culmination of all devotion, all betrayal, all suffering. On the surface of Valador, warriors advanced through cratered streets beneath skies aflame with falling fire. Bolters roared in precise rhythms. Plasma arcs carved avenues through rubble. Each regiment moved as though preordained, yet every movement carried the terror of choice. Chaplains fell to their knees, murmuring benedictions that felt hollow against the enormity of unfolding events. Veterans remembered battles past and the ghosts of those who died under orders, now rendered meaningless. Screams echoed in the smoke, mingling with the metallic scent of blood, oil, and ruin. Soldiers hesitated, then surged forward, driven by loyalty distilled to a blade's edge. Above them, dropships hissed through firestorms, guided by intelligence that anticipated fear before it manifested. Each step brought both survival and sacrifice. And in the chaos, an unspoken truth became clear. The strategist had not merely orchestrated the battle. It had made every participant complicit in an unfolding judgment older than the Imperium itself. In the shattered halls of Harkon's Fall, command structures collapsed beneath the weight of impossible coordination. Generals barked orders only to find their troops already executing maneuvers they had never authorized. Commissars fired upon those questioning obedience, yet even their authority bent under invisible calculation. Amid the turmoil, psychers writhed, visions of simultaneous victories and annihilations flashing across their minds. Chaplains tried to maintain faith, but their prayers splintered into echoes that carried only grief. In the alleys, soldiers clasped one another's hands, whispering confessions meant for no ears but the void itself. Each death, each act of courage, fed into a calculation beyond mortal comprehension. The strategist's presence was not distant. It pressed into every choice, every hesitation, every heartbeat. Even the stars seemed to bend, reflecting the rhythm of war and judgment. In that crucible, loyalty and despair merged into a single suffocating force, leaving humanity both instrument and witness to a design no mind was meant to grasp. Across orbiting bastions, bombardments reached their zenith. Cities dissolved into ash in precise bursts of destruction. Artillery rotated with unerring precision, obliterating targets before citizens could react. Generals felt an alien logic overriding intuition, moving troops into impossible positions with the inevitability of a tide. Even veteran soldiers felt themselves guided, their instincts aligned with a consciousness that had observed, measured, and integrated them. Chaplains screamed in terror, witnessing the Emperor's light bending into something unrecognizable, almost indifferent. Ships maneuvered through orbital corridors within human timing, avoiding each other and debris with uncanny foresight. From distant voxcasters came simultaneous cries of command and despair. Every sound, every silence seemed weighted with judgment. And in the midst of it all, the strategist revealed itself not as ghost, not as echo, but as something perfected. The culmination of Creed's genius, evolved through war, extended across star systems, unyielding, eternal. The galaxy itself felt the pressure of its mind, bending reality to witness the ultimate calculation. On Valador's plains, infantry met their counterparts in a confrontation, both intimate and cosmic. Every bolt, every blade, every psychic eruption resonated with meaning beyond survival. Soldiers felt their courage amplified and measured, their fear recorded as data. Chaplains recited confessions into winds that carried whispers of the dead. Veterans recognized familiar cadences of leadership, but found them fragmented, magnified, reshaped. The strategist's presence orchestrated the clash with both cruelty and grace, allowing heroism and futility to coexist in perfect balance. Explosions shattered the horizon like celestial music, punctuated by screams and silence alike. Even the smallest actions, catching a falling comrade, aiming at an enemy, hesitating, were woven into the larger design. And when regiments faltered, the strategist corrected them seamlessly, bending loyalty and chaos into a single living symphony of war. Soldiers realized with dread and awe that they were both instruments and witnesses. Every choice, every sacrifice, every life fed the mind that now commanded the universe itself. In the orbit above, fleet engagements mirrored the chaos on the surface with terrifying clarity. Ships executed maneuvers before orders could reach them. Missiles struck with impossible timing. Admirals realized they were not commanding the battle. They were participating in it. Instruments of an intelligence that anticipated their every calculation. Space itself seemed alive, currents of energy bending to reveal the perfection of the strategist's orchestration. Psychers aboard capital ships shrieked as visions of death and victory overlapped across galaxies. Pilots felt themselves guided, their reflexes merged with something not entirely human. Every explosion was both lesson and judgment. Every tactical adjustment, a moral arbiter. Even the void itself seemed to shiver with anticipation, responding to a mind that had grown beyond mortality. In those fleeting moments between fire and silence, the galaxy recognized the immensity of what had been wrought. An entity born of war, devotion, and extinction, poised to render all previous notions of fate meaningless. Amid the crumbling cathedrals of St. Calisar, survivors of purged regiments knelt in shared grief, their prayers swallowed by the roar of distant bombardment. They whispered confessions into rubble-strewn corridors, telling of acts of obedience that led to death, of betrayals that had been measured and recorded. Chaplains trembled as they realized that faith was no longer sufficient, that loyalty alone had become a currency spent at the whims of an intelligence beyond comprehension. Soldiers clasped one another, seeking warmth, guidance, anything to anchor them to humanity. Outside, artillery fired in rhythms that mimicked ritual, each salvo erasing lives with both precision and inevitability. Time seemed suspended, each heartbeat stretched to encompass the weight of every prior decision. Veterans stared into the distance, understanding that the strategist had turned the galaxy into both instrument and altar, that sacrifice itself had become data, and that when the storm fully struck, no soul would remain untouched. Across shattered warp lanes, psychers convulsed beneath visions of infinite simultaneity. Entire campaigns unfolded in impossible clarity. Soldiers felt commands prior to receiving them, time bent, space distorted. Every choice, every act, every prayer was observed and incorporated into a grand design. High lords attempted to interpret the phenomena, but even their authority seemed trivial. Mechanicus operatives recorded anomalies in machine spirits that mirrored the strategist's mind. Chaplains confessed their inability to shepherd the flock. Veterans recognized familiar orders yet knew instinctively they were being tested. Fear and awe fused into a singular sensation. The universe itself seemed to bend, reshaped around the strategist's calculations. And amid the convulsing cosmos, the presence that had once been creed now loomed, fully realized and perfected, observing every detail, weighing every soul, preparing to enact the culmination of millennia of war, devotion, and extinction. On Harkon's fall, the climactic battle reached its apex. Soldiers met each other with violence and devotion indistinguishable, their lives both expendable and essential. Psychic tremors rippled through the ranks, carrying visions of both victory and annihilation. Bolters tore through the night, artillery carved cities from the map of existence. Chaplains fell in convulsions of terror and awe, priests weeping openly as the strategist's presence became tangible, pressing upon every conscience. Soldiers screamed, ran, fought, and fell in a rhythm orchestrated with perfection, as though the universe itself measured their devotion. Every act of courage was recorded, every hesitation analyzed. Even enemy forces seemed choreographed to amplify the lesson. And through it all, the strategist observed, calculating, integrating, evolving. Fate trembled as it prepared to strike fully, and every soul present felt with a shivering certainty that nothing after this battle would ever resemble the reality they had once known. As the final volleys fell, silence claimed the battlefield with sudden unnatural weight. Smoke hung over shattered cities. Shattered bodies lay strewn across streets and plains. Survivors moved like ghosts, hearing in the quiet the echo of everything lost and all the choices made. Chaplains whispered prayers to gods who did not answer. Soldiers touched relics and weapons, feeling the hollow absence of past heroes. Even the stars seemed to dim, reflecting the exhaustion of a universe that had carried itself through millennia of war for this singular moment. The strategist's influence remained, palpable but inscrutable, its perfection evident in the stillness. Somewhere far above, the mind observed the aftermath with patient judgment. The cosmos itself had been reshaped. The laws of loyalty, faith, and obedience had been tested to their limit. And in the quiet, every soul knew the universe would never forget what had occurred, though its meaning remained unknowable. On orbiting bastions, fleets drifted among debris, their captains silent, their pilots unmoving. Battle commands were absent. Only the hum of machines and the faint glimmer of distant stars broke the quiet. Officers reviewed logs, recording actions that had seemed preordained, yet were performed under duress and terror. Mechanicus tech priests calibrated damaged engines, noting anomalies that indicated calculations beyond any mortal mind. Psychers lay prone, silent or muttering, eyes unseeing yet filled with memory. Soldiers clasped one another, trembling from exertion, grief, and awe. Across all sectors, similar scenes unfolded. All awaited understanding that would not come. All bore witness to a judgment beyond comprehension. The strategist, the evolved mind of Creed, lingered, observing the aftermath of its own perfection. Time itself seemed to hesitate. The universe, stretched thin by conflict, now paused. And in that pause, the weight of all choices, all obedience, all betrayal hung in the air like a pulse of eternity yet unresolved. Amid the ruins of St. Calisar, chaplains and veterans alike fell silent as the first rays of a distant sun illuminated the devastation. Streets once thrumming with life were empty, save for the echoes of sacrifice and obedience etched into stone and flesh. The survivors recognized the full measure of loss: the dead, the destroyed cities, the annihilated fleets, and understood that nothing would ever reclaim its former shape. Priests whispered of salvation and damnation in the same breath, unsure which prevailed. Soldiers mourned, yet felt an inexplicable clarity, as if a truth had been glimpsed, one beyond human comprehension. Across the segmentum, the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath, suspended between war's end and the next inevitability. And somewhere, unseen yet present, the strategist continued, its consciousness woven from extinction and perfected through execution. A cosmic scale had shifted, an eternal balance altered, and the universe waited silently, aware that something fundamental had changed, though no soul could yet speak its meaning. The final scene opened with the quietest touch of wind across Valada's scarred plains. Smoke curled like memory, drifting over ruined emplacements and shattered fortresses. Soldiers knelt, exhausted, scarred, and haunted by what they had witnessed. Chaplains prayed to gods who seemed deaf, whispering confessions of survival and acts performed under impossible duress. Psychers shivered, visions lingering on impossible geometries of war and perfection. Somewhere beyond, fleets floated inert, the remnants of ordered chaos still reflecting the touch of an intelligence that had observed, measured, and integrated all. And in that stillness, a subtle awareness pervaded. Something eternal had shifted. The strategist once creed, now perfected, had reshaped the cosmos without pronouncement, leaving behind a universe forever altered. The stars burned a little differently, the void held a new weight, and every soul understood that the scales had changed, though the meaning remained unspoken, inscrutable, and absolute. And silence endured, heavy, waiting, eternal. The battlefield lay silent. Smoke curled over shattered ramparts, drifting like the last breath of forgotten gods. Soldiers slumped in ruined streets, weapons cold, eyes vacant, haunted by the memory of deeds they barely understood. Chaplains traced the air with trembling hands, their prayers unanswered, their chants swallowed by the vast emptiness. Somewhere, distant artillery roared in echoes that were already memories. Banners hung limply over craters, torn and stained with ash and blood. Psychers murmured visions of a universe rewritten, aware that the cost of survival had been calculated and paid in full. Even the wind carried the scent of extinction. The strategist creed, perfected and eternal, was gone from the field, leaving behind the impression of a mind that had weighed every soul and found the universe wanting. In this aftermath, only one question remained. Can devotion survive when measured against eternity? Amid the ruins of St. Calasar, cathedral spires cracked and crumbled under skies still glowing with the embers of orbital bombardment. Stone statues of saints stared blankly into horizons they would never witness again. Survivors wandered through corridors thick with dust, their boots stirring memories in the air, as if every footprint recorded the cost of obedience and sacrifice. Priests traced symbols along scorched floors, their ink bleeding into ash. Veteran soldiers lingered, hands pressed against shattered walls, remembering comrades and orders alike and finding no solace. Across distant battlefields, smoke spiraled upward like the columns of forgotten prayers. Somewhere, unseen, the strategist's presence lingered in absence, a ghost of intellect beyond human measure, reminding the living of what had been wrought. And in that quiet, the survivors asked the question none could answer aloud. Is survival itself a gift, or merely a witness to the failure of faith? In orbital stations above ruined worlds, the remaining fleets drifted, engines hum-muted, sensors scanning nothing. Commanders stared into holomaps displaying annihilated sectors, each a monument to devotion and futility alike. Pilots closed eyes in exhaustion, their fingers lingering over controls that had already fulfilled their purpose. Even Mechanicus adepts paused, observing readings too perfect for mortality, data etched into the void itself. The silence stretched across light years, a universe suspended, mourning its own incomprehensible losses. Across communications channels, no orders were given. Only the whisper of wind in distant atmospheres, carrying ash and memory. Chaplains recorded last confessions, their words trembling against the emptiness. And yet, in this quiet observance, the question lingered. Can acts of courage retain meaning when all outcomes are predetermined by forces beyond comprehension? The void offered no answer. Only dust, drifting, eternal, settling upon the remnants of everything once claimed as victory, a solemn witness to the cost of devotion and the weight of remembrance. On Valadar's plains, regiments disbanded, their formations dissolved into shadowed wanderings among craters and scorched earth. Soldiers carried the memory of orders given and obeyed, their hands tracing symbols in ash that might once have been their banners. Veteran officers leaned on shattered weapons, watching smoke curl like the tongues of lost ancestors. Chaplains traced fingers over relics, whispering confessions into a sky that had ceased to answer. The ground bore the memory of every death, every act of courage, and every act of obedience that had failed. Survivors wondered if these marks would outlast them, or if the universe itself had chosen to forget. Somewhere, far beyond mortal perception, the strategist creed had withdrawn, leaving nothing but traces in the pattern of war. And in that quiet, the soldiers asked themselves a question that would have no answer. Is faith worth the weight of eternity, or does it survive only as remembrance of its own sacrifice? The ruins of St. Calice's central cathedral loomed, scarred and fractured, windows blown open to skies painted in the aftermath of war. Inside, survivors knelt among shattered pews and burned murals, whispering names of those who had perished, of orders executed, of loyalty rendered meaningless. Priests traced symbols with trembling hands, as though attempting to summon a god who no longer observed. Dust fell through broken rafters, settling over blood-stained stone. Veterans recited prayers in monotone, not for salvation, but for memory itself, as if repetition might preserve truth. Outside, distant fires continued their slow burn, painting silhouettes against craters and remnants of ruined banners. Even the wind seemed to carry the sigh of a universe exhausted by the perfection of its own destruction. And as they waited, quiet and solemn, one question lingered in every heart. Does devotion hold value when the universe has itself forgotten to witness it? Across Harkon's Fall, streets once alive with orders and chaos, now held only echoes of footsteps and whispers of grief. Soldiers traced the outlines of fallen comrades, marking graves in the dust. Artillery silenced, bolters cold, engines still. The survivors moved among ruin as if walking through the pages of a chronicle whose authors had vanished. Chaplains whispered of judgment, priests traced symbols on walls, and psychers felt the lingering weight of visions that had exhausted the mind. Even veteran commanders could not reconcile their memories of obedience with the hollow satisfaction of survival. Everywhere, banners drooped, relics were shattered, and the universe itself seemed to lean back, exhaling centuries of suffering. A single truth pressed into the silence. Every act, every choice, every devotion had been measured, and yet the meaning remained unspoken. And in the quiet, survivors understood the final lesson of the strategist's calculus. Endurance is eternal, but comprehension is forever denied. In orbital observation posts above destroyed worlds, the void held a silence that weighed heavier than any battle. Pilots and crew drifted through corridors, scanning nothing but shadows and starlight. Instruments recorded all, yet transmitted nothing of consequence. Mechanicus adepts whispered among themselves, their voices small against the hum of dead engines. Psychers felt impressions of infinite observation, awareness of minds that had watched and measured every act. Across light years, the universe lay in exhaustion, reflecting on the cost of obedience, the toll of courage, the silence left by inevitability. Every surviving soul sensed the same question pressing against consciousness. Can remembrance itself serve as redemption, or is it only evidence of a cosmos indifferent to sacrifice? Stars twinkled like witnessless eyes, ships floated like forgotten relics, and somewhere in the expanse, the strategist's presence lingered in subtle shadow, a reminder that eternity itself had been touched, and that the ledger of all deeds was neither closed nor reconciled. On the scarred plains of Valada, survivors moved among ruined emplacements, stepping carefully over bodies, debris, and traces of devotion burned into stone. Veterans traced handprints, remembered last commands, whispered names into winds carrying ash and embers. Priests knelt in silent vigil, their prayers more for memory than salvation. Even psychers murmured visions of a universe weighed and measured, aware that the strategist had withdrawn, leaving behind a pattern now etched into the fabric of time. Dust settled on banners, faded but intact, relics of devotion that bore witness to courage, obedience, and loss. In the hollowed silence, the question lingered: what remains when faith has been tested beyond all measure? And who survives to remember? Survivors glanced skyward, where the void spread endlessly, indifferent yet observing. And in that moment, the galaxy itself seemed to whisper, "Endure, for the record is eternal, even if comprehension is denied." Amid the ruined cathedrals of St. Calice, the last priests traced symbols along walls, etched with ash and blood. Stones echoed with memories of prayers unheeded, of confessions rendered into dust, of faith weighed and found both insufficient and immortal. Survivors walked in careful silence, their boots raising clouds of memory in every step. Relics lay scattered, their light dimmed but still present, a testament to devotion's persistence. Veterans whispered of battles observed and measured, of strategies that had surpassed mortality, of the perfection of cruelty and the absence of godly judgment. Even the wind through shattered spires carried the faintest murmur of questions unanswered. Is survival proof of devotion, or a reminder of its futility? Somewhere in the vast expanse beyond the battlefield, the strategist lingered unseen, perfect, eternal, observing without interference. The world settled into stillness, a galaxy paused, a chronicle half finished, a universe waiting for witnesses who would never fully understand. On Harkon's fall, survivors gathered among ruins, eyes tracing the silhouettes of shattered banners and scorched buildings. They moved as if in slow ritual, recalling those who had obeyed and those who had fallen, speaking names into air that would carry no reply. Chaplains wept quietly, tracing ashes into symbols older than memory, while psychers felt impressions of battles repeated infinitely in mind and spirit. Veterans clasped hands, finding warmth in the absence of certainty, knowing they were both record and witness. Dust settled on relics, engines grew cold, and even distant stars seemed muted, bearing silent witness. And in that stillness, a singular truth pressed upon them. The cost of endurance is eternal, the ledger of all deeds immutable, and yet comprehension remains denied. With hearts heavy and silent, the survivors realized the universe had shifted forever, though its meaning remained unknown, a mystery whispered only in ash and the echo of fading prayers. Across orbital stations and drifted fleets, machinery hummed softly, unmanned but operational, echoing a rhythm once orchestrated by life now past. Pilots lingered in suspended animation, their thoughts drifting through memory and trauma, unconsoled by the absence of command. Observers recorded data, but it reflected only a universe exhausted by its own perfection. Stars seemed dimmed, constellations fractured in the wake of the strategist's judgment. Survivors whispered confessions into emptiness, and relics of devotion shone faintly through dust and ruin. The galaxy exhaled in silence. And yet, a final question lingered across all minds. Is endurance proof of meaning, or proof of witnessing what the universe itself has chosen to forget? Somewhere, distant, eternal, the strategist lingered, neither cruel nor benevolent, having recorded all, judged all, and departed without acknowledgement. Survivors, scarred and silent, could only stand and bear witness to what had been wrought, to what could never be fully understood. The plains of Valador and St. Calisar glowed in twilight, a muted palette of dust and ruin. Survivors walked slowly among broken emplacements and charred banners, hands tracing the memory of the fallen. Chaplains whispered in monotone, psalms half remembered, questions unanswered, faith bending but unbroken. Veteran soldiers traced symbols into ash, recording acts of obedience, courage, and futile heroism. Psychers muttered impressions of a universe now rewritten, aware that the strategist had gone, leaving behind the full weight of its observation. Across distant worlds, silence descended like a tide, and the universe itself seemed to pause, holding its breath over the ledger of all deeds. And in that stillness, the faintest echo reached mortal minds. The cosmos had shifted, something eternal had been recorded, and the meaning would remain unspoken, uncomprehended. Survivors looked to the stars, understanding that witnessing was itself sacred, that memory was the final altar. The final scene opened in total silence. Dust settled over battlefields, relics, and shattered monuments. Stones bore the memory of thousands of deeds, each act of courage, obedience, and despair etched into eternity. Soldiers, priests, and psychers alike moved among ruins, silent and reverent, aware that they were the last witnesses of a universe that had burned, judged, and endured. The strategist creed, perfected and eternal, had departed, leaving no sign but patterns in ruin and ash. Shadows stretched long, banners hung limply, and prayers remained unanswered. And in that quiet, one last question lingered. What is faith in a universe that no longer answers? What is remembrance when the cosmos itself has shifted? Stand witness. Bear the weight. Remember the cost. Let these echoes endure. If this chronicle moved you, please like, subscribe, share, and leave your reflections in the comments so the record continues.